Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to a soft reboot, or maybe from the new profile picture, it's a hard reboot of the Racer Clock podcast. I am Daniel Gilligan, and I will be joined on this new fantastic version of the podcast by two of my very, very good friends. We'll introduce them in a moment, but there's obviously going to be a lot of you coming to this podcast for the first time. We did a few episodes a couple of years ago, and it was good fun, but it was just me. It was something which I enjoyed doing, but then sort of just stopped. Not entirely sure why. But to give you a little quick recap of who I am, if you want a bit more in-depth and detail, go back and listen to Season 1, Episode 1. But for me, I am an actor, a commentator, a presenter, a general mess-abouter, and I work in the world of Formula 1. I worked for McLaren for 6 months back in 2018, and then I moved into an events role within the world of Formula 1 and have been there ever since, including a little bit of travel out and about as well, which is very nice, very exciting. So, again, more on me in the other episodes. Would very much encourage you to go check that out. Maybe not the rest of them, though. Maybe they've not aged well. I don't know. Who knows? But someone who will know how to get us into a good run in this new beginning are my two brand new co-hosts, and that is TK, Tom Knight, and Scotty Designs. TK, I'm going to come to you first of all. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, Dan. It's a pleasure to be on here, although I am questioning the decision to use go on a run and TK in the same sentence, but I'll move past it.
Well, you know, we will move past it very quickly and swiftly before anybody notices. Yeah. In terms of yourself, then, let's sort of go through. We've posted a thing earlier on social media today. We're recording on the Tuesday before this goes out. Of course, you've been an F1 fan since the kind of the 2010s. So sort of talk us through your exposure to the sport and so on.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a bizarre one, really. I think I grew up not necessarily having Sky Sports. A lot of my exposure was probably through Channel 4 and obviously when it was back on the BBC and ITV and all that sort of gubbins. When I was going to friends' houses, the ones that did have the subscriptions to be able to watch it, and some of their dads who were watching it kind of semi-regularly on a weekend, that's where most of my exposure came from. I think as I then grew older and became more interested in motorsport and racing as a whole, that was where I don't want to call it an obsession, but the obsession kind of took that next level high in many aspects. Got to university, had a load of friends that were into Formula 1 and started watching it a lot more frequently at that moment in time. And from there, it's kind of blossomed more and more to a point where I'm now, commentating on motorsports and esports kind of as a result of that, really.
Very good, very exciting, very nice. And what does let's try and sort of humanise you a bit for the audience. Let's do that sort of fun thing. What do you what can we find you doing for fun of a day or an evening or whatever it happens to be?
I'm one of those really weird people that I just have a load of different hobbies that sometimes don't necessarily go together. I'm a big fan of Lego. I'm a big fan of doing things with my hands. Whether it's working on cars or fixing things. Don't make that face at me, Dan, because I
don't know what face you're talking about. The audience are never going to know what face I'm pulling. I'm going to put you up front and centre at this point.
That's really fun. I enjoy working on various different things, whether that's my car, whether that's Lego models, a little bit of everything. I'm very much if my mind takes to it, I will probably go out and buy everything to do with it and then do it for 6 months and then probably move on to the next thing rather swiftly.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. And in a sentence, shall we say, thoughts on this upcoming Formula 1 season?
Excited but sceptical is probably the way I'd look at it.
Excellent. Very good. We'll come back to you, of course, as the podcast goes on. Scotty, over to you now. Of course, my favourite livery designer. And that's kind of your niche, really, isn't it? That's your thing.
Yeah, I've been designing liveries now for about 5 years in terms of concept liveries. And I just have a real passion for the creating cool things with the cars. I think it's such a unique canvas that not a lot of people really get into. And then there's obviously the other aspects like helmets and such. But just designing things in that 3D realm is just such a unique experience.
Excellent. And in terms of your passion for Formula 1, that comes from your dad, right?
Yeah, when I was young, I used to come downstairs, see the F1 on, and always ask my dad what colour car was David Coulthard in. And he'd tell me a different colour every single time. And I'd spend the whole time watching the race trying to figure out what car. He'd say pink car. There was no pink cars on the grid at the time. I'd just sit there looking for the pink car all race. But that kind of developed, and probably did push me towards liveries and designing them, because I'd always been looking at the cars, trying to find the one that David was in, and yeah, just as that kind of grew, I developed into designing things for like t-shirts and such, and then eventually found my way back to F1, making liveries on the F1 game.
See, I've known that you're a good egg for a long while, but now the audience knows that you are because you were a fan of David Coulthard. And as we all know, all the best people were fans of David Coulthard. In terms of this season, what are you sort of thinking in a sentence or two?
I think TK got it right. Cautiously optimistic would be the best phrasing I think I can give it.
Excellent. Very good. Now, we should point out that Scotty does not usually... he's not usually able to completely communicate whilst being completely still, as the video listeners, watchers, will be seeing on their screens. We do have a couple of technical gremlins on our first recording, but it should all be working perfectly fine afterwards. And, from time to time, we might throw up some other things on the screen when Scotty is talking, like that and that. And now I've got to figure out in the edit what I'm going to end up putting there. But there we are. So, chaps, we've got a whole Formula One season to talk about, of course. We've had the Barcelona test, not test. And then we've had the first test, but not first test. But yes, it is the first test because it was the shakedown first in Barcelona, in Bahrain. And now we've got the second test, but technically third test, but not as third test because it's a test that's the second test at Bahrain. That's starting tomorrow, or today, if you're listening to this on release day. And if you're not listening to it on release day, then we don't judge you necessarily, but your timing needs work. So in terms of what we've seen so far, we are going to get into all of that. But TK, there was something that you noticed on social media that you wanted to bring up.
Yes, you confused me for a second because you've gone from qualifying to where we were going with this. But you're absolutely right. I saw a bit with Jenson Button either today or yesterday. Time is a bit of a concept at the moment, but he was talking about his accolades. Let's just say, talking about his history of Formula One, his presence, and elements that he's got as a result of winning his World Championship back in 2009. And there was a couple of key points that I really took away from it. One was that he was talking about his Red Pass, I believe it was called, his access all areas that world champions get for life. So that is media areas, paddock, grids, when you're allowed to walk on the grid, obviously not when the race is going on. But it's an interesting thing to see that these world champions get this access all areas pass. It makes sense, but it was something I'd never really thought of before.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And I mean, you say you can't walk on the grid during the race. I mean, that's obvious. It's not the 1970s anymore. Back then, maybe. Pretty much anything went back then. And there was the conversation then around what happens with the trophy as well, which particularly caught your eye or your ire or both.
Probably a bit of both. I think it was. The conversation led on to naturally World Championship trophies. We're all aware the driver gets to take it at the end of the season. Obviously, Lando Norris will take it metaphorically home with him if it's not ended up at McLaren. But then the drivers have to return it at season end so it can be passed on to new champion. And he was talking about the fact that you could buy a replica trophy for an extortionate amount of money. Probably not for the drivers, but for you and I, especially, and everyone listening, probably is a fair chunk of change.
And that figure was?
Roughly £35,000, if memory serves me correctly, which is more than most of our annual salaries.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this in 2027, that's probably about £1 bajillion by now. But there we are. Scotty, have you got any thoughts, feelings, or opinions on this matter about drivers having to pay for a replica trophy?
I mean, what's that, like 2 touches of the rear wing? On the grid? It's not
I think it's even less, isn't it? Was it not 50,000? Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. At least for the drivers. Like, you just touch a couple of rear wings, your team gets some money, boom, sorted.
So your team gets money? Surely your team has to pay.
No, it goes to the FIA. But like, maybe the FIA can just accept that that's an extortionate amount of money that you're spending, and maybe they can just be like, you know what, take it out of that penalty.
The FIA accepting that they're being extortionate? I don't think that's ever going to happen. The FIA could never be extortionate. Never.
No.
Don't come after me, MBS, please. We've got this thing. I think it's interesting because certainly from that sort of outside perspective, if you like. There's your sort of view of, well, that's a lot of money and everything, and it is, like, to most people, to everybody in this call, certainly that's a lot of money. It's more than the average wage in the UK, I believe, as well. I think it's what, £33,000. So it is a lot, but F1 drivers more often than not paid in seven figures, never mind five, and they'll probably have an awful lot of expenses in there as well, things that will be paid for by the team. So a lot of their day-to-day costs, certainly their costs associated with work, you would imagine are probably going to be covered by the team in some way, shape or form. And the other thing as well is it's not uncommon for teams to keep original trophies as opposed to letting drivers keep them, even just for race wins and podiums, never mind for World Championship. It also, for me, it draws a bit of a parallel to the Oscars. Because if you win an Oscar, and you go up on stage and you shake it around and you thank too many people and take too long and they play the music and off you go, then at that stage, that trophy you take through into the press room and you wave it around a little bit more, and then you have to give it back. And in the same way, you then have to pay for a replica of the Oscar that you won. So I think that to those of us who are not sort of within those worlds, one day I'd like to be. I'd like to get an Oscar one day. But for those of us who are not actively in those worlds, it of course then means that, we don't necessarily have that perspective to kind of go, do you know what, this is silly, this is ridiculous, this is everything else. But for them, it's all very normal.
I'm questioning, though, how much has that industry normalised the fact of you don't keep these trophies, we charge you for replica ones, to an element that probably, when you look back at the grassroots style of sport, where if you win a trophy, you keep a trophy.
Yeah, and when you are in that younger stage of your career, I think there's less notoriety, isn't there? There's less things going on. I mean, Scotty, you've designed liveries and things like that. Have you ever designed a trophy?
I've actually not designed a trophy. That does sound like a really interesting thing. I've designed like little graphics of trophies, but never an official proper trophy.
Famously one that I snatched from behind TK in an animation we did once upon a time.
Exactly,
But when it comes to something like that, I mean, let's divert. Why ever not? If you were to design a trophy, what's going to be your thought process? Are you going to try and make it something that it has some sort of local flavour to it for wherever the race is, or are you just going to want to put your own particular spin on something?
I mean, I want something that's going to stand out, in a driver's hand. Something that, if it's like a one chance to make a trophy, I want something that when the photos are taken of that race winning driver gets the photos with the trophy, it's going to be memorable. So I like the idea of the ones that have got like the local spin, but I feel like I would go for something quite retro, kind of, more like a proper trophy, with its like the golden colors and such. And try and work it, like I've always liked the idea of a trophy, especially in the F1 world, working in the kind of shape of an F1 car, just purely because it's F1. We should celebrate the design going into the car with the trophy, I feel.
So have you had any favourite trophies, do you reckon, over the last few years with that in mind?
With that in mind, not so much. I do. There was one that stood out as, I think it was the Hungary one. I mean, Hungary's trophies are always very just incredible in terms of like the artistic approach to them. I can't put my finger on any like specific trophies though. It's not something that I've really given much thought, because most of the trophies, the ones I don't like, are plates. I've been very clear on that from day one. As soon as I saw that they were giving away a plate as a trophy, I hated it, and I don't like that approach. I like the trophies to be proper trophies.
But what is a plate? Because, and hear me out, the Australian Grand Prix trophy is a great big steering wheel that kind of just looks like a plate. And certainly the second and third place trophies are basically just plates. But they're not... Do you see what I'm getting at? They're not like the plate trophies. Like Hungary, I think the constructors' winning trophy last year or the year before, I want to say, was a great big porcelain plate. So where's the definition there? Or do you just hate all of those Australian Grand Prix trophies?
Yeah, I mean, anything that it looks like you could eat your dinner off of, I don't think should be a trophy. So I think if I haven't properly given those Australian ones a look, but if they are literally just plates with a steering wheel, I wouldn't be a massive fan of them as well.
What are your thoughts
if
on
you
the
can
Lego
eat your dinner
trophies?
off it. Don't get me
Ooh.
started on Lego because they're cool. They're very cool. But giving them out for a Formula One Grand Prix win, no, no.
Poor old Nico Hulkenberg, eh?
I was
Wait,
there to watch that, so it was a great podium. And to go home with, what is it, injected plastic when everyone else has been handed a load of shiny metal. Like, his daughter
They
probably
got
loved
this
it,
Lego
right?
trophy. But they got this Lego trophy and they did this Lego race and they didn't just put them in the same thing. That could have been the winner of that Lego race they did in Miami, I think it was.
Imagine.
It was Miami. That was probably the best thing that F1 has ever done in terms of pre-race preamble. That was brilliant. I loved that so much. And it's fun stuff like that as well, which I think that F1 had been sorely lacking for a long time. It was a sport that took itself way too seriously. There was no social media involvement when that came along and was really starting to ramp up. Even now, you would say that FOM still has a pretty, shall we say, conservative attitude towards, and that's conservative with a small c, towards social media. Because, things like when people do reaction content, which, for you guys are content creators, I think you might end up sharing the opinion with me that reactions are sort of borderline as to whether or not they're content, quote unquote. But certainly, stuff like that, or showcasing, oh, this happened, let's talk about it. That stuff tends to get copyright strike pretty quickly, doesn't it, by FOM? So it's nice when they do start to branch out and do some more fun things.
I think what's bizarre in that world, especially when we talk about the content side of things, the online presence of F1 and FOM as a brand, you look at what the teams are doing individually. I speak quite highly of Red Bull and VCARB, particularly the way they engage not only their drivers but the esports teams as well, and they post a lot on social media. Normally, it's really good content as well. We're not sponsored by them. I thought I'd clear the air on that one, but they genuinely just do social media really well.
If only we were sponsored by anybody.
Yeah.
I need to make a new audio booth because this one is cooking me alive right now, as it always does. I'll do an audition in here. I did one earlier on today before we started recording, and after 5 minutes, I was already starting to feel as though I was melting into a puddle. And that's maybe a bit too much information. That might get cut out or bleeped. But there we go. Let's move things on now. We're about sort of 20 minutes in. So at this stage, we have something else that's brand new. It's not just that we've got these two beautiful men in this podcast with me, and we're going to get a hard cut zoom there on TK as he performs that particular thing. Again, for the audio listeners, you're missing out. You should go on YouTube or switch your podcast provider to video if that's supported, and if I figure out how to get it uploaded that way. Yes, we have now got ourselves an interview. It's our star in a not car. If you like, it's if you want to go down the Top Gear analogy, it's none other than Mr. Benjamin Daly, a F1 content creator, and you're going to hear from him now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first interview and definitely the first recording of this interview for the Race O'Clock podcast. For the audio listeners, my guest definitely was not just giggling there at that particular statement. For the video listeners, watchers, whatever, well, you can see the reaction. Of course, I've got the wonderful man, the person I'm very, very honoured to call a friend, Mr. Benjamin Daly, one of the biggest F1 gaming YouTube content creators that is out there. Ben, very good to see you, definitely for the first time today. How are we doing?
Definitely for the first time. I'm definitely not getting deja vu from this conversation right here. But no, it's a pleasure to be here. Practice makes perfect in the sim racing world, Daniel, and I think we'll be all the more better for it. So I'm ready for a question that I've definitely not answered before coming right up.
Exactly, definitely not answered this one. What's the square root of 72?
Pi.
Maybe, who knows? I'm bad at maths.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that one he hadn't been asked before. This one he might have been. You, of course, for anyone who's accent challenged, I suppose, you're clearly an Australian. You're from down under, and you've moved across to the UK many years ago. Not too many. You're still a young man. And at what stage did you decide you hated the weather in Australia?
Well. Probably the moment I discovered video games, to be honest, which was not that long into my life. As you know, content creation, being a YouTuber, all that good stuff, means that you spend a lot of time indoors and not really outside touching grass or seeing the sun. So uh, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a true Australian, to be honest. Yeah, you probably. Well, I've kind of got a tan on me because I did go to Australia a month ago. So I'm looking pretty good for the winter months, but I'm trying to make up for it in my adult life by touching grass a little bit more. But my formative years didn't see the sun too much, so this lifestyle kind of has always suited me, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to that move across to the UK, this is something I feel that we'll probably get into in a bit more detail when it comes to talking about your content creation and things like that. But what was the prime motivator for the UK specifically? Was it just the closeness to F1? Because, of course, most of your content, if you're not aware, then you should be subscribed to Benjamin Daily. But of course, most of your content revolves around the Formula One video game or Formula One generally. So with 7 of the previously 10 teams being based in the UK, made a bit more sense maybe to be over here.
Yeah, it was a combination of things. Naturally doing F1 content, gaming, etc. A lot of the teams are based in the UK. A lot of the content creators are based in the UK. There's a lot of organizations, businesses, companies, etc. That station here. And so naturally I kind of gravitated towards a European time schedule, which meant I'd be staying up late all the time. And you just feel very disconnected or very far away in Australia, like you are anyway. When the world of F1 is very European based, and my friend group being there, it just as a lot of things that tied into being in the UK. I think my ex at the time also was based in the UK, so there was a lot of friends in the UK too. So there was lots of things culminating together that it just made sense. And like in maybe the year or two prior, I'd done a lot of trips into Europe, into the UK. And for anyone who knows, who's spent 24 hours on a plane, you'll know that it's not too fun. So trying to avoid that as much as possible. So it just made sense. Moving to the UK, there's a lot more going on here. You can do a lot more travel and lots of events going on and stuff. So it naturally made sense for me. It got to a point where I'd kind of not outgrown Australia, but it made a lot of sense for a lot of different reasons to make the move here. And ever since I've been a lot happier, and it just it's been the best decision I've ever made, to be honest.
Excellent. There you go. High praise for a country that is a bit on fire most of the time. But there we are. So in terms of you then as a person, but as I say, we'll get into all the content creation stuff. We'll get into the F1 stuff later. But for you as a person, obviously you've been able to cultivate this audience over time, I think in part because like most big creators of your personality. And so we dive into that a little bit. And it's clear it's not just Formula One, but it's cars, it's car culture more generally speaking. You know, we've been on Discord calls many times late at night, probably too late at night, frankly, where we're looking at Auto Trader listings and various things like that. So what for you started that love of cars, and then just start to tell us a bit about where that led to in terms of your purchase history?
Well, love of cars definitely came from my parents. I think I can say that both of them enjoyed driving spiritedly. They like to pretend that they're race car drivers on the road occasionally. They had some nice cars for Australian standards. We had this, I can't remember what they're called. The old version of a Commodore, but from like the 90s. I'll send you a message of what it's actually called. But my mum and dad had one of those. And it I don't know, it's just a natural thing. My dad turned on the TV one day and we were watching Australian V8 supercars and slowly tuned into that. We then went to a race when I was 12 years old for an entire weekend. And believe me, when I was 12 years old, going to a racetrack for 3 days, it was very exciting, but very draining at the same time. But it left such an impression on me that I loved cars and I loved racing ever since. And then I got to about driving age. My mum's mum, my grandma, handed down her Toyota Camry to me as my first car, and I kind of learned to drive in that and in my mum's Commodore at the time. And I don't know, one thing just led to another. My dad bought me the F1 game as well. We got stuck into that. And that just kind of led to this career that I'm in right now. And the career then led me into some of the awesome cars that I've had over the years. And yeah, I've lived a very privileged life. I say this as if like it's the end. It's definitely nowhere near the end, but it's nice to sit back sometimes and look back at, wow, I've done some pretty bucket list stuff so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to, that car ownership, you talk about the Commodores and the Camrys and things like that. You then had a car which you told me a lovely story about this on a slightly botched recording. Sorry, everybody, about that. But I'm sure that just means you're now well rehearsed and well practiced. So go ahead and tell us A, what the car was, and B, that story.
Yeah, so I then bought my own Commodore after the Camry, so upgraded from that. Which also as well, all my cars in Australia seem to be V6s. Like, we just love our big engines in Australia for some reason. And that was something I really noticed when I moved to the UK. All the engines are like 2 litre or 1.4 litre, like a lot smaller. So not dissing, but we like our big engines. So I had the Toyota Camry V6, Holden Commodore V6, and then I moved into a Nissan 370Z, which was like my version of a dream car. I saw the 350 in Tokyo Drift, but I'd also seen it just around. There's a lot of JDM cars in Australia, and so got a bit of inspiration from that. Tried to save up a bit of money, and then it got to a point where I actually had to wait to get a 370Z because there's really strict rules in Australia about licenses and like being on provisionals. You have to wait until you're on your open license, which is basically like 2, 3, 4 years, I think. You can't have a performance car over a certain level or threshold. I saved up a bit of money, and then by the time I was ready to buy a 350, I could afford a 370. So I got the 370, and this was the car that I owned from 2017 until 2019 when I moved. Long story short, I go to sell the car because I couldn't keep a car on the other side of the world. And I couldn't sell the car in time before moving to the UK. So I entrusted my mum to look after the car and, facilitate any test drives or people looking at the car. And it didn't sell for a little bit. It was around COVID time as well at this point. And my mum eventually took the car out because it needed, to keep the battery going. And my mum then quickly realized, wow, this car is actually really sick. And long story short, she bought the car off me. And so the car to this day is still in the family after 9 years. So every time I get to go back to Australia, I get to see my family. I get to see the car and drive the car as well. So it just kind of like takes me back to that nostalgic time of being in Australia and just really good times. Rising through the ranks of like YouTube and it was a really good time. So yeah, it's really cool to kind of still have that familiarity of my old life while still living my new one. So yeah, I'm very lucky.
Very, very lucky. And with that car over there, you describe that as being that was the dream car to a certain extent, and this, that, and the other. You then come to the UK, and slight step up, I think it's fair to say.
Well, before the step up, there was a step down. I had to humble myself a little bit.
Okay.
So I actually sold the car to my mum to then afford to like rent and stuff in the UK. I full disclosure, I live with my parents until, I don't know, 25, 26 when I moved. And then discovered this whole fun new world of being an adult, of paying for rent and all this stuff. So
it's rubbish. Don't do it, kids.
That sorted me out from like my first 6 months of renting. I then got a Mini Cooper diesel, which was a bit of a poo box, let's say, without swearing. But it was a really fun car to drive. It's like a go-kart. I actually really love minis. I'd love to get a spicier model one day. So I had a Mini Cooper D. I also got a Fiat 500 for my partner at the time. That was also pretty modest, pretty slow cars. So we got through that period, and I think within a year, I then got an Audi R8. An Audi R8. I was missing the horsepower a little bit, so I stepped up quite a bit from the 370 to a car that I never thought I'd be able to own. But it turns out the UK car market is incredible for used cars for German cars. These kind of cars are much less attainable in Australia because of having to get them over. There's a lot of taxes involved with German cars, especially. They're seen as a luxury kind of item, and especially a sports German supercar. Pretty special. And the sentiment is not lost to me even to this day. I've owned it for 7 years now. And I still pinch myself just about every time I get in the car. So had the R8 from 2019. I then 1 year later, I got a why can't I think of it? The Mercedes A35, which is a very nice kind of everyday but luxury kind of car, sporty as well, 300 horsepower, and just a very, very nice car, very refined. And then we fast forward to 2022, which this one was not even in my wildest dreams. I thought maybe one day I could get an R8. I was pretty happy with that. But a McLaren, never did I think I would own a McLaren. And yet here we are, nearly 30 years old. I bought a McLaren 600 LT. Not just any McLaren, a limited edition. Daniel, you know your cars. You know the LT line of cars are pretty special.
Absolutely, very much so, and it's of course still in your. Oh wait, no, it's
no.
Yeah. That's a shame. That's a low blow, I'm afraid.
That is a low blow. Yeah,
that's a low blow.
You got to bring me back down to earth, At least I could say I had it at one point.
Exactly, which is more McLarens than I have ever owned, unless you count the little Lego one that sat on the top of my old PC at the moment. But there we go. So we've got all of that. Then all of the kind of the car history. Let's now sort of look at F1 as well, because of course that's what you're most known for. You would never believe it, having listened to the last 10 minutes of this interview, but that is what our podcast is about. So when it comes to Formula One, where did that love start? You mentioned the V8 supercars as being kind of one of those early formative racing experiences, if you like, but where does that then sort of transition or is added to by F1?
That kind of comes into phase around 2009, 2010. I'd say more 2010 when Mark Webber was thrusted into championship fighting position. When the resurgence of Red Bull, Sebastian Vettel going over there, then they really nailed the regulations in 2010 especially. And so there was a lot of media hype around Mark Webber, and it got my dad interested. We started to watch some races. I remember very vividly the 2010 Turkish Grand Prix where Vettel and Webber collided, and we were like, oh my God, what's going on here? And then I think from that moment onwards, we were fully invested into F1. And I'm a little bit sad in a way that I didn't take to F1, or I just didn't really know about F1 being as young as I was. I wish I'd have followed it at the same time as I did V8 supercars from about 2004 onwards, because imagine seeing the V10s in their prime. I would have, I'd be even more obsessed than I am now, or maybe more depressed. I don't know that we don't have them anymore. But we just start. I was watching V8 supercars for a long time. Then it transitioned to F1 slowly. My dad bought me the game in 2010. It just coincided that an F1 game was made in 2010. And mate, honestly, the rest was history. I then took that to another level by just like league racing. I discovered online gaming for the first time in 2010. I'm a bit of a boomer. I was a bit late to the cause with all that stuff. And I kind of discovered I had a bit of a talent for driving. I always thought I was okay or decent, but then I started racing online and I found myself winning more races than not. So that was quite nice. But it was especially like the F1 games which really solidified my knowledge, my passion, just the familiarity of coming back every day and just familiarizing myself with the sport.
Excellent, very good. And when it comes to that sort of that familiarization, that learning and all that sort of a thing, do you feel that had you maybe not become an F1 fan at that point way back when, do you feel as though maybe that allure that comes with things like Drive to Survive, would that have maybe tempted you in an alternate reality where the sport didn't quite grip you in the same way in 2010?
I think I probably would have been a fan of the sport, but it would have taken a little bit longer. It might have taken Ricardo in 2014 to bring me on board. But I think just, internet culture in general, I feel like the world becomes smaller and smaller as we go. So like I just had no knowledge of F1, or I didn't have any other friends who even followed motorsport, even Australian motorsport within my circle. So, yeah, I think eventually someone would have came along who liked F1 and would have introduced me to it, or Drive to Survive, definitely, because I always had that interest in racing. So I would have been like, oh, F1, let's check this out. So I'm glad I joined when I did. And it did cement a stronger passion at the time than if I'd have been coming in late. I think I'd still be just as big of an F1 fan, but who knows if I'd be making content. I probably would have missed the boat waiting until, another decade later. So, yeah, I'm really happy that things kind of panned out the way that they did.
So there we are. That is part 1 of the interview with Ben. And if you want to hear all the rest of it, talking about the content he's made over time, what he thinks of the upcoming Formula 1 season, well, we've got 2 more parts to come. So make sure that you end up coming back to the podcast for episodes 2 and 3 if you're a fan of Mr. Daly. And if you're not, then you should come back anyway, because you can just skip past him. I wouldn't advocate that necessarily. We need the watch time. But he's also a lovely man. He's a good friend of ours. So, listen to him. He's got many insightful things to say in that sweet, sweet Aussie accent. I don't know what I'm saying at this point. I'm going delirious. Anyway, we've got a Formula 1 season on the horizon. We've hinted earlier on, of course, that we've got some of those things that happened. There was Bahrain Test 1, there was the Barcelona shakedown, definitely not a test, but probably a test, and that was all behind closed doors. So there was a bit of intrigue and mystery and everything else that was surrounding that. Aston didn't turn a wheel until the closing stages of the second to last day, and then the car conked out. Then you had, of course, Williams not making the test at all. Audi, new engine manufacturer, not new team, because they are Sauber to all intents and purposes. They got themselves out there first of all the teams, not first out the pit lane, but first on the track in a filming day at Barcelona. Mercedes first out at 9 o'clock on the first day of Barcelona shakedown. It was all a little bit smoke and mirrors, I think it's fair to say. Were there any takeaways you guys had from the Barcelona shakedown?
I think the interesting thing that I really noted was how locked down they had that paddock. I was watching a lot of journalists and a lot of media personalities that report quite frequently on Formula 1, trying to figure out a way to bring any insight to the data. We had journalists climbing the hill that's very adjacent to the Catalonia circuit. We had one of the, I want to say watch-along live stream providers that does so on YouTube. They'd managed to get into the circuit timings through an old MotoGP link that they'd been provided. Like, that's how they got into the circuit timings. Yeah. They used the MotoGP password. And then F1 discovered, obviously, the stream was watched by several thousands of people. So they cut timings to everybody to try and prevent it. I think the teams even lost timings, from what I understand.
Yeah, very strange. I think one of the things which I found very amusing about the whole thing was I was listening to some of the coverage from the race from Ed Straw, and I think it was John Noble, I want to say, was the other person who was there. And they were talking about how the police in Spain had come up to them and said, no, anything that can see the circuit is owned by the circuit. I'm just like, that's definitely not legal, is it? Come on now. You might own a bit of land immediately around the track, but they're not going to own a hill that's 500 metres away.
And they definitely don't own sky rights. I would have implored someone to rent a helicopter for the week or the weekend just to see what happens.
No, but the Catalonia circuit, they own that helicopter.
Every helicopter that flies above it is suddenly the possession of the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya.
What happens is there's a great big mechanical claw that goes up into the sky, grabs it, and then it's just like mine now.
That's just Daniel
Their
Ricciardo.
taxes must be horrendous. They've got so many assets coming in and out.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be their accountant, would you? Just be like, oh yeah, we had this helicopter for, what was that, 33 minutes? Yes, okay, that's tax deductible.
Yes.
Had 17 planes today.
We had one very angry spy plane ended up being dragged down for some reason. We had to let that one go.
Imagine the tax on a Boeing 777 flying over your airspace about 3 minutes.
Oh dear. I mean, it was a bizarre affair, but we did at least get some footage out via FOM themselves. They put some stuff on YouTube and on F1 TV. We saw that the cars look like F1 cars. They have 4 wheels. They're exposed to the air, and we have front and rear wings. They move now.
4 wheels isn't a certainty when it comes to F1.
This is true. This is very true. For those who know, you know. If not, then look at the 1970s. It was a weird time, not just for F1, just generally. That's my societal commentary for the episode. We have our then look forward to Bahrain Test 1, which happened last week, of course. And through that, we were able to see that these cars, what was suspected to be the case in the years leading up to these rules and then through the Barcelona shakedown, it might well be coming to pass.
Yes. I think there's a lot that we take from testing, from proper testing, not just shakedown. I think it's also worth bearing in mind that you said we got to see testing, the 1 hour a day that we were allowed.
Yes.
FOM deciding that we are children and limited our screen time themselves.
I know, how dare they? That's so unfair. Except it's not unfair if they want to offer me a job. Please don't judge me too harshly on this podcast. But yes, it was. I mean, to be fair, I do understand the motivation on their part for only doing an hour each day, because we've seen now for a few years, like ever since they started broadcasting testing, really, they have sort of run through a few things, but they've never really been able to do a full stress test of things. Then they get to the first race, and then everything is live, and then everything doesn't really work properly. You end up having last name versus last name on the screen, for example. I can, completely understand the motivation on F1's part not to broadcast all of those days of the first test. What is happening, of course, is the test starting tomorrow. It will be fully broadcast from start to finish. So that way then, it's that gives me some faith that they've done all their stress testing, they've done everything they've wanted to do on the previous test, and now we'll get a nice, good, smooth broadcast package for the new season. Because, TK, you've done plenty of broadcasts for esports and various other things using OBS and special packages and all these other various things. It's even if you're using what is broadly speaking the same package from one season to another, it's still going to be a very complex and technical thing, and it may not necessarily be that all the things you had set up previously work again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a very hot and cold aspect when you head into not only a new season, but maybe especially talking in an esports sense, if you're switching from one production to another, if you want to try and carry over elements, you can kind of hope that they work, but there's no guarantee they're going to work in many aspects. You have to try and hope that everything is set up so that it's transferable across. But speaking of broadcast packages, and especially to do with Formula One, I was hearing the other day that they aren't sure yet whether they're going to show on the broadcast overlays when the drivers are using either overtake mode or in that XY axis of the rear wings. They haven't figured out a way to show it yet.
I mean, this is maybe where we turn to our designer friend here. Scotty, in what way do you think, if you were in FOM's position, you would try and integrate that bit of information into the broadcast?
I mean, the easiest way to introduce something to that without overly change the graphics would be to just have some sort of color overlay over the driver's name. I think Formula E kind of do this with overtake mode. If it's that, is it the fan boost mode when they go through the overtake zones?
Yeah.
Attack mode.
I believe their name attack mode. That's it. I think.
Yeah.
I believe when they do that, the name kind of lights up green, and has a effect. If not, it's something like that. But that's kind of the approach I would go for this. It's something simple where the name's kind of highlighting up on the graphic. Your eye would be drawn to it because obviously you got the 22 drivers this year. A couple of them maybe having their names go highlighted a green or highlighted a red maybe for each of the different ones. Just gives a bit more information to what the driver's doing. And then obviously you introduce it in the same way that they introduced the halo graphic that they have. They could just introduce that part in there with again, colors. It's the same thing they did with DRS on those graphics, specifically on the Halo ones. It just kind of turns green when the DRS opens. But overall, colors. That's kind of the best way I think they should be represented. No little logos, because those can be lost on little monitors or people that are watching from close. They need to make it as obvious as possible for someone who is watching it from whatever distance on whatever kind of monitor. And I think the best way to do that is proper highlighted colors with just a simple bit of movement on the colors to keep the eyes drawn to it when it happens.
I'd be intrigued, and sorry to butt in here, Dan, if you were going to try and bring something up.
No, you crack on, mate. It's all good.
We have seen in testing that though the rear lights, the rain lights that they traditionally have the ability to use different colours. We saw blue on the Aston Martin. We've seen pink on one of the other cars briefly, and the speculation for those was that they're running in this engine limited mode, wasn't it? That they're going slower on circuit. Be careful, don't crash into the back of me, please. Is basically what these lights were showing, and I'd be intrigued to see if we could have something similar for the overtake mode when it's on. Say the light flashes pink or purple, it shows that the car is in this overtake mode. It might not be useful to the drivers necessarily, and I appreciate that's what those lights are there for. But for a viewer point of view, it'd be a really easy way to be able to see who's pushing at what point.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, there's already the use of the rain light to denote different things. You've mentioned there in the testing, but even in previous years, when you had a rookie driver on circuit or a driver, maybe it was a driver wouldn't be without a super license, but it'd be something along those lines. A driver who is not a full-time Formula One driver or doesn't have very much F1 experience or something of that effect would have a green LED. Oh, is it with a lack of super license, is it?
Yeah, I believe the ones that are testing for the teams when they're doing the runs. I think if they or they haven't done a certain number of hours or laps in the car yet, they're under this rookie status, as you were saying.
Yeah, and so that sort of thing that exists now. For that reason, you probably wouldn't end up seeing a green one because that would be something in FIA statutes and codes and various other things. But to your point, they've already got the red flashing, and that's to indicate, well, broadly speaking, it's to indicate that you are derating on the straight. But even then, there was something, I've lost the comment, sadly, or the post rather, but there was an explanation done as far as the various different levels of flashing. Because apparently the different levels of flashing mean different things. And again, it's sort of just simple change the colour to something else to mean something else would probably be the easier way of doing it, rather than sitting there and trying to figure out, now, is that 3 flashes or 5? In terms of how frequently it's coming through. So yeah, something like that would work well, I think. And for drivers, I think it would be useful because, you see someone go past, let's say it's purple for overtake mode, then it goes into red, you'll know then that suddenly they're going to start coming back towards you because they are derating and they're harvesting. So yeah, that would work. And then to Scotty's point, absolutely, colours would work really well. But I actually think, and I'd be interested to hear what you both think on this, for the overtake mode, yes, absolutely, show that because that's effectively DRS. I think, though, for what was formerly the X and Y mode, it's now, I think, low and high downforce mode or whatever it is they're calling it now, because they've changed the terminology a few times. I think that doesn't need a graphic because it's just going to be assumed now that on the straights you're always going to be using it. It's not like DRS where it was, it's DRS-like in the sense that it will be activated by the drivers on the steering wheel, but it will be something that you're just assumed to use. It's not something that's there to be a competitive advantage or disadvantage. It's just there to be used. And so I think that in that sense,
I agree with that.
Yeah, it doesn't need broadcasting.
I mean, when it comes to the ins and outs of F1 cars, there's so many different modes and things. Like back when engine modes were a thing, you didn't have that represented by graphics. I don't think every single detail about the car needs to be represented because, yeah, kind of as you say, you can kind of decipher from your own like what the car is doing, and it also gives you that reason to want to learn about the cars because then you understand what the cars are doing from the things that aren't being told.
Absolutely, yeah. So, sorry, go on.
That's right. I'm just thinking back to a funny moment because obviously you've had all 22 cars are running this XY mode. It's part of the regulations. We're fairly aware of it. I'd have loved to have seen in 2020 and 21 when Mercedes had DAS, the dual axle steering, was it? I think that's what it represented.
Yeah.
Axis steering. Just a graphic up there, just a massive FU to the other 9 teams on the season. Just going, we're using extra straight line speed here.
It would have been interesting, wouldn't it?
It would.
I think, stuff like that would be funny, but of course it's all centralised in FOM, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not something that the teams can do themselves. And if the teams could do it, they would just hide everything. You would just get a T-cam view, but the entire cockpit would be blacked out, and you wouldn't be able to see anything. And they'd probably black out bits of the suspension arms and the little bits of the front wing that you could see as well. Either with some sort of video editing mask, or they might just go for if it's simple and it works, then do it. Just smudge a bit of marmalade over the camera lens, something like that.
I was going to say Sharpie on the camera, but if marmalade
Well,
works.
I mean, that's that too. The marmalade would be interesting, at least. How much of it would be ripped away by the downforce over the course of the race? Who knows? There we are. I didn't expect to be talking about marmalade on this Formula One podcast, but there we go. We've got probably about another 10 minutes or so, and there's something that I want to talk about. This is something which has been in my head for quite a long time, and it's the raceability of these cars. And I'm not convinced that it's going to be particularly good for a number of different reasons. The one thing is these cars are still very heavy. Let's do a quick summary, shall we, of the main changes that we're going to see over the course of this season compared to last year. If you're a Formula One fan of a year, then this will be a good breakdown for you. Cars are narrower by 10 centimetres. They're shorter by about 25 centimetres, I believe. They are 30 kilograms lighter. And then, of course, you've got this difference in the powertrain. They now go from being roughly 16% hybrid to now about more 45-50% hybrid instead. Still about the same 1,000 horsepower level, because that's due to the fuel changes, where not only are they a 100% sustainable fuel, but they're also fuels which have an energy flow limit through the engine. Previously, this is where we get into some technical reads here, apologies, you would have a maximum amount of mass of fuel that could move through the engine per hour. So it was 100 kilos per hour. And what ends up happening here is we then end up finding that actually now it's represented as megajoules, so the unit of measurement for energy. So if you have a particularly energy-dense fuel, and the fuel itself is not as dense as others, then effectively you can run a lighter car for the same or greater level of power than your competitors. Now, that's great innovation. That's great for Formula One. That is not what I have a problem with. The fuel is pretty much the only thing I don't have a problem with in these cars. But we've, of course, got this massive electrification element now. And that massive electrification element means that these cars are energy starved. We've seen it in testing. It might improve with software management and driving techniques, and as the cars get better, it might improve. But I suspect it won't be by much. And the main reason I feel for that is because in the simplification of these power units, they've gotten rid of the MGU-H, so the generator which would recharge energy off of the turbocharger and various other things like that. And they're just going back to the MGU-K, so effectively what was the old KERS system in 2011 to 2013. And they haven't added any front axle regeneration. Now, they've done that because the teams were very worried about Audi. Because Audi, of course, dominated the World Endurance Championship. And as they did so, they had a hybrid powertrain with front axle regeneration, in addition to rear. Now, this then means the teams effectively they lobbied for that to be removed from any potential regulation, and so now we have these power-starved cars. So the use of things like the boost button and the overtake button, I don't think are going to happen anywhere near as often as we would like them to. Because if you imagine this, you're going down a straight, and you have got, say, 50% of your battery remaining, and you're close enough to use the overtake button, and you could overtake the car in front of you. Okay, slam on the overtake button. I'm now going to move past that car. We're now 3/4 of the way down the straight. Oh, I'm out of battery because I've just used more of it than the car in front, so I can overtake that car in front. Now I'm derating, now I've got nothing left, and now they're just going to sail back by me again without using their own overtake button. So now the energy offset between you is even larger than it was before in their favour, even though you were the attacking car. It doesn't make much sense. The other thing as well is that because of that electrification now being roughly 50-50, it's now, anybody will know who's ever had any insight into how electric road cars are designed. If a car is draggy, that massively affects the range of the battery. So they rightly, in a sense, they have gone for this low drag setup with the active aerodynamics on the front and rear wings. And that then means that we've got low drag cars. And low drag means no slipstreaming. Means no way of being able to close up to the car in front of you effectively. Means that the straights don't last as long because you get through them quicker because you're travelling in a straight line even faster. And then because you've gotten through them even quicker, it means there's fewer opportunities to overtake because typically it's the end of a straight into a braking zone is where an overtake is going to happen. All of this combined with what I just feel are poorly worded regulations. You've got things like the floorboard area, the bargeboard area. They didn't lock that down enough to stop teams from just pointing all the elements that are supposed to inwash the aerodynamics. They're just pointing them outwards and causing outwash. All of these things, I think, are terrible for overtaking and for the sport. And I realise I've spoken an awful lot over the last few minutes, so now I'm going to just leave that with you guys to have a chat about. Have any sort of thoughts, feelings, queries on that?
I mean, if I may take the conch here for a minute, I think there's multiple points that you've raised. I'll start with the cars in general. I think that's a good starting point from the monologue that we just heard.
Yes.
Obviously, you mentioned the cars are, by design, 30 kilograms lighter. But actually, I think we're seeing the flip side of that. We're not seeing the added benefit of the cars being lighter because everybody's overweight as they head into the shakedown and the testing. And yes, teams will find, kilograms here and there to try and lift some weight off the cars. But when we're at a starting point where they're all 50 kilos above regulation, that's still 20 kilos above what last year's cars, as we record this, what last year's cars were, because 30 minus 5 is 20 in the favour of being a little bit overweight. So I'm intrigued to see how it balances out in that aspect, if they're able to try and take some weight off the car as well. But at this point in time, I think we're at a bit of a roadblock as to where can they find that weight without compromising performance. I think, Scotty, am I chatting nonsense?
No, I mean, the cars are overweight, so we're not going to really see that benefit. The thing that has been interesting me the most is that the story that's kind of broken recently in terms of, I think it's Mercedes engines and their sustainable fuel not being ready yet. So I think that's also going to come into play because, I mean, they're going to have, I think they said temporary fuel for those kind of cars, maybe going into Australia. That's obviously going to hinder their straight line speed as much, even more. And then obviously with the points that Daniel raises about the racing, it kind of sounds like we're going to have just a really boring season coming up, at least for the start, until they maybe hopefully make some changes and understand the cars and the setups a bit more.
I think you're right in that aspect. I think I also heard that none of the teams ran the sustainable fuels in the shakedown tests, if memory serves me correctly, because none of them were ready.
With the exception of Ferrari.
So
okay. The idea behind this, and anybody who's more knowledgeable on this listening in, correct me if I get it wrong, but the idea behind this is that in the test, the teams pushed that, they're developing these new fuels, they're very complicated, and so therefore, please can we not be forced to use them during the testing and not homologate them until after testing. Now, homologate is a word that most people have never come across in life, so I'll just explain it. It's effectively locking in the spec. That's kind of the simplest, easiest way to describe it. It's maybe not completely 100% accurate, but to all intents and purposes, that's all you need to know. And when the teams do homologate these fuels, then they'll be using them throughout the rest of this season. They might get the opportunity to upgrade them later or into next year, or whatever it happens to be. Now, these 100% sustainable fuels, they have to come from these renewable sources. So it could be municipal waste, it could be biomass, it could be carbon captured from the atmosphere or from the exit of industrial sites, all sorts of different areas. But Mercedes and Petronas have currently, the understanding in the media is, not got their fuel in a position where it's ready to be signed off. However, Ferrari and Shell have, Audi and BP have. So these are two manufacturers and suppliers who are working well together with one another. Obviously, Shell and Ferrari is the longest partnership in motorsport. They have been together since 1950 when it began, possibly even together before that as well. My memory doesn't go quite that far back. Yeah, with these fuels, so during the testing, Mercedes has not been running the sustainable fuels. Neither, I believe, has Honda and Aramco. But for those other two manufacturers, they seem to be in a relatively strong place. There's then only, who's the other one I'm missing out? Who's the other manufacturer? Red Bull. There's been no word that I've seen as to whether Red Bull have been running with or without those fuels, with, of course, Mobil, their particular engine fuel supplier. The other interesting one as well, and we'll leave this as a thought for people to ponder, because we are now getting into the last few minutes of this episode here, is Ferrari is the only one using biofuel. Everyone else is using e-fuel, so effectively synthesized gasoline. So that could be an interesting question, because again, if they're able to get this fuel nice and energy dense and energy rich through biomass as opposed to this synthetic gasoline, then that could be Ferrari onto a winner. There are a lot of signs pointing towards a strong Ferrari this year. I'm confident though, and let's I tell you what, let's have a controversial prediction that's just here to upset one or two of our friends. Let's be honest. I think that Ferrari will start this season amazingly well and then completely fall off as the season goes on. I have no evidence to back that up. It's a gut feeling. That being said, my gut feelings on this podcast have not always been accurate, so we'll wait and see. We've got a few more minutes to go, I would say. Any sort of last thoughts on that particular topic from either of you? Scotty, do you want to start if you have any?
This whole season really does sound like the start of the Cars 3 plot, and I am so here for that.
Brilliant. Yes. Yeah. I've personally not seen it, but I will now add it to my list of things to watch because if we're going to be referencing...
Well, you're about to watch it with the whole season, to be honest.
Well, fair enough. There we are.
Do you want a brief rundown of the plot whilst we're here?
Go on then, why ever not? Yeah, sure.
So,
spoilers for anyone else who's not watched Cars.
Lightning McQueen, the protagonist enters the world. Is it 3 or 2 that we're on about? I think it's 2.
3.
Is it not 3 that has the fuels? No, it's 2. It's 2. It's 2.
So Lightning McQueen enters the World Grand Prix. Himself and a load of other racers, a Formula-style car, some rally cars, and some other enter this multi-country race across the world where they enter in various different stages. It's all founded by this rich billionaire car that insists on using, biofuels, essentially, like alternative fuels. The story then develops to the point where he's using these infrared lasers hidden within the broadcast cameras that he knows when pointed at the gas tanks of the cars will cause these e-fuels to blow up. And it all comes out in the end that he's this big oil investor that works in traditional petroleum and that sort of world, that he was kind of fear-mongering the alternative fuels element of the world to then fill his pockets, basically.
Interesting. There we go. So there we have it. Pixar hates progressive fuels. That's a Race O'Clock exclusive for you there. Like I said, we've got a couple more minutes. Just going to run down a couple of things that have come out in the news recently, and then we'll do a bit more of a deep dive, I suppose, on testing in next week's episode. In a couple of sentences or less, there's the abandonment of the chief designer at Red Bull Racing. Thoughts?
I'll pass it to Scotty. He's the artistic one between us.
Well, when I say chief designer, the technical designer.
Same thing.
Indifferent.
Indifferent. Excellent. Very good. We've then got, of course, the story here saying that Christian Horner might be buying out Alpine.
I'm here for it. Honestly, I think he's for whatever wrongs he did, and I'm not going to go into it on this podcast, he is a personality within the paddock that I think you kind of enjoy having around for many aspects. He's that face on Drive to Survive that says some funny things. He's always going to give a funny comment in the paddock. Whether Formula One in whole is better off without him, I'll leave that up to the viewer's discretion and feel free to write in. But I think from where I sit and where I stand, I enjoy having him on the grid.
Are we talking about Günther Steiner or are we talking about Christian
Horner? Any thoughts, Scotty? Or
that story's been going around for such a long time now that I'm just kind of like, we'll wait and see. If it happens, it happens.
Excellent. Very good. Right then. Well, that has been the first episode of our rebooted Race O'Clock podcast. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you want to come back for more and watch as we develop this and make it even more fun and more entertaining and more informative. We'll be all things to all people, I'm sure. That always works for satisfying people rather than burrowing into a niche. But there we go. We have ourselves a interesting... We'll leave it at that. Formula One season ahead of us, and hopefully it becomes an exciting one as well. If you want to hear some of the best conversations around it, and you want to hear about and watch some features and various other things, then follow along on whatever podcast service you are listening or watching on, and we will be flooding your inbox over the next season of Formula One. And with all that being said, I've been Daniel Gilligan. I've been joined by Tom Knight and Scotty Designs, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much, and goodbye.